Niki Konstantinidou. I'm very happy to greet you here in our series of talks with our distinguished guests. I'm very proud to have you here. We're 2 days from 8th of March, International Women's Rights Day. And we would like to hear you, the lawyer, the human rights defender, the writer, the screenwriter, you Greek Australian advocate of rights wherever you are and whatever you're looking at, to talk about the question of sexual and gender-based violence against women and girls. I know that the array of issues you are, attentive to and working on is large, but today we're only going to talk to you about this issue. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, Gisu. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be on your platform and to be having this discussion because it's one of the most important issues facing humanity, not just our epoch, our times, but, you know, it's a constant through several thousands of years, I guess, at least the last 5,000. So it's something we must deal with at some stage, and no better time than the now. So I'm very happy to have this discussion with you.
Now, I once read or heard you saying it's only around the end of November and on 8th of March that the world wants to speak about women. But obviously, what has made it evident for masses of people, the pandemic has brought to the forefront of our attention the hidden pandemic, which is violence against women and girls. And it is ongoing, and it's 365 days a year, and it cuts across continents and classes and color and languages. So I want to hear you speak to us about this hidden pandemic.
Yes, well, the crisis, the pandemic crisis, has acted like a pressure cooker. So the more you try to push this down, and you know, when the heat is up, the more it's going to explode and become very visible and very noisy. So it's a situation which cannot be camouflaged so easily when it's hidden, usually under the carpet, and now it's kind of hidden somewhere else in another spot, which is not so easy to camouflage. Uh, before the pandemic, there were, for example, there were releases of this violence because the woman wasn't constantly in the target range of her abuser. Now, when we talk about domestic violence, it's not only women that are victims of domestic violence, but we are in this discussion focusing on this type of violence against women and accessorially also children. Often these women are mothers, and so they are interrelated. That violence very directly affects very young children in general, but especially very young children who are victims themselves in their own right. So yeah, just to make it clear to your public that domestic violence is not limited to violence against women. It's more prevalent, obviously, against women, but all sorts of violence in society that has been able to find its release through everyday life before the pandemic has been put in this, you know, in a little box where it's very difficult to hide what's happening.
An Indian human rights defender was talking in a group I was participating in a couple of months ago, and he said that a hotline in India on the issue of violence against children under the lockdown received several millions of calls from children and the families. Now, why is it important to break the silence and reveal the reality of violence against women across the world? The French have a good expression. They say libérer la parole, which means to release or to free the word. Why is it important to speak about these issues?
Well, because words reveal realities now, they may reveal several realities from several different perspectives. But a victim's reality must be seen so that we can have a reaction to a reality. Words are not abstract. One of our problems in this day and age is that we are losing the meaning of words because they have been used very cleverly to manipulate, whether it's through advertising. Well, it's not just modern day manipulation, but words are being used by the more dominant parts of humanity to manipulate realities so that certain reactions are suppressed. Now, what we need to do is we need to express the other reality, the one that allows a situation which is horrific, which has lasted for a long, long time, as I said earlier, thousands of years, at least in most parts of the world. Uh, and we need to look at that reality and decide what we're going to do with it. And so we need to be very careful with what words we use to express what's happening. And we have to allow the victims to also be able to clearly put words on their experience rather than for all these experts to surround the field with again with their own words and not allow a particular reality to come out from the people experiencing it. So we cannot face or change or do anything in this material world if we don't understand the material conditions of it. So the first step is to allow people to speak about what it is that has happened to them, even though a lot of women and children uh, who have been through this horrific experience, often for a long, long time, suffer from post traumatic stress disorder and they have difficulty putting words to their experience. So uh, it's it's um, it's an important step, um, but we it's something that we have to be able to identify, and the only way we know how to do that is through words or art. But yeah, any form. It doesn't have to be words. Any form of expression uh, about this situation is important.
Yes, because we need to change minds. I mean, the plasterers in France, a group of very determined young feminists, have in the last year or even more gone around towns uh, putting up short messages naming the most recent victim of domestic violence all around town. This is also a way of awakening public opinion about a question which remains taboo, not only in law, but in practice all over the world in different forms. We had the experience of the Taliban where women were banned from writing in case they would write about things and they were banned from the public sphere in the form of a sexual apartheid so that one would not see them and not hear them. Um, Recently with FIDH, A to Z of 61 terms on sexual and gender-based violence was issued just recently. And actually we're launching a 61-day campaign in Persian, one day, one word. This is also a way of trying to reach public opinion and sensitizing public opinion. Now, you're the author of a book which is very interesting, and you're about to publish it in English. I would like to share this intriguing cover with a very interesting title in French, which is Juste une gifle with a question mark. Now, what does that mean in English?
In English, it means just one slap. There's a good reason why I put the question mark there, because we can change the tone of the question and we can say just one slap or oh, just one slap. Anyway, so the reason why it has a question mark is because this particular book, which is based on a true story, it started with quite a violent physical attack in the Easter of 2011. And this very violent physical attack was reduced to, with plea bargaining, etc., was reduced to one slap. And once she agreed for the criminal charge to be reduced to one slap, after that, for the next 4 years, it was a situation of it's just one slap. Why are you creating such a big problem over
So
just
so
one slap?
this is a story. It's a real story.
It's a real story, yes.
It's a cruel story, as the
It's a
French title
cruel
says.
story, yes, yes. Well, it's an interesting story from the point of view that she was a surprising victim, if you like, an unexpected victim, because she's a affluent French woman, uh, quite successful, middle class to middle the higher levels of middle class. Um, she's quite affluent, independent, and despite all that, despite all the protections one expects to have if one has an education and a good job, she still fell victim to domestic violence. So the real story is about her and her six. At the time this happened, the baby was 6 months old, a little girl, and her partner was a doctor. So so it's not. Domestic violence is not something that happens in certain certain classes only, etc. It
Sorry,
is.
as we see recently in the cases of incest
Mm,
in France, where some people are coming forward to, and some of the accused perpetrators are extremely high level, extremely visible, respectable professors, etc.
yeah, but we it's going beyond that. I mean, we see that as in some ways, we're seeing our civilizations degenerate. A kind of decadence, which is pretty much in many parts of the world, especially in affluent parts of the world, where society has decided to get rid of so many taboos, but it's gone in a very weird direction. So we see a lot of violence, especially sexual violence, against children from high level actors. Epstein. The Epstein case actually has revealed a lot about what some of these jet set jet setting crowd, jet setting, macchiato drinking, sushi eating um, crowd of people, the untouchable high class. So it's very interesting that we are going through several crises in terms of not just financial crises, but in terms of a crisis of civilization as to why is this acceptable? Why is it that certain people that have been implicated in these types of scandals, the Epstein scandal, for example, and others, uh, and why are they still being protected by an entire system, a globalized system? And I think a lot of us know who some of these high level actors are. Some of them have
Niki, I
well,
want you to get back to, because
yes,
the
yes,
just a slap, just a slap is both written in a form of a narration, a novel, and but it's also a handbook. Can you explain to us what you have in this book and
okay.
why?
Well, what I did was I took the structure of a fairy tale, Sleeping Beauty, mainly because fairy tales are quite powerful. They're didactic. They're very powerful, and that's why they are used to train, condition the minds of little girls, and little boys. Um, and I think they do have a very strong effect. We live with the subliminal messages and the overt messages we get from a very young age about how the world is structured. So I used the fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty, which actually the original version was Sleeping Beauty was raped in the original version. So I use this structure to get a message across as to the realities and the realities and the myths about what we expect from our world. So a lot of little girls and little boys grow up thinking that Prince Charming will come across and save the day and bring along all happiness and joy to the world. Uh, so um, we are not, um, especially from the point of view of little girls. Little girls are not really prepared for real life. They don't expect to end up with somebody who's going to beat them up or mistreat them. They expect to be saved from the nasty, horrible stepmother. So, from the horrible women by a man who is going to be a very charming man who has all the solutions and the financial gains and benefits, because he's not just any ordinary. He's a prince. He's the prince who saves the little princess. So
And the
uh,
ordeals one faces in wealthy country like France, which considered itself as the land of human rights. You explain, you describe how at different levels how difficult it is for a woman who speaks well, who is educated, who knows her rights, to actually find justice.
yes, well, she actually is quite eloquent. She does express herself well. The thing is that nobody's listening. The problem isn't so much that she couldn't liberate her, libérer la parole. She actually did quite well in liberating her words and quite articulately. The problem was that nobody took her seriously. The worst perpetrators were women, strangely enough. There was only one male judge in the whole case, and he was part of the criminal case. And, uh, I mean, okay, it wasn't a brilliant decision, but before it got to the judge, as I said, a violent situation was reduced to a smaller violence, to just one slap. And so the judge had one slap, apparently, in terms of what he could see on his file. He had one slap, and he had a doctor who was basically, saying, "Oh, I'm a doctor. I've never done this before. It's terrible. I lost control." And so he was given, probably at the time, maybe not an inappropriate sentence, but when he started to um, reoffend, over the next 4 years, he regularly reoffended. Nobody stopped him. See, so the first decision was probably not inappropriate given the circumstances. But then once it took off and went to the family court, things started to get uh, out of order once the family court took over. And there, in the family court, uh, we only had female judges who the first one of them made a very dangerous decision, because the first judge, irrespective of her gender, it was a woman, but anyway, she was a woman. The first judge basically ordered, knowing she knew that there was domestic violence involved in the file that she had in front of her, because by the time this went to the family court, there was the order from the criminal court. So, knowing full well that this man, at least on one occasion, lost the plot and was physically violent, she, irrespective of that, she ordered that he could. Okay, sorry. Let me just, because I'm thinking about it in French. The order was that Katia, the victim, would have full custody, and that however the husband, the not the husband, the man, the abusing man, had the right to find out at all times where the child was. Now, when a child is 6 months old, it's always with its mother, pretty much. So she forced Katya to give her location at all times that the father of this child wanted to to uh, to know. So in a situation where this woman was trying to get away from this man, to be forced to be giving the location of the child and therefore her own location, is torture, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this woman lived in a situation of constant anxiety and was being tortured. Actually, it fits the definition of torture under the Convention Against Torture. If you look at the definition of what torture is, that psychological torture that she had to endure with this for a long time, with this man threatening her, insulting her constantly via SMS or email or telephone, or just turning up and stalking her for a long, long time. Was irresponsible. That judge was totally irresponsible. Didn't understand what it is to be a victim of did not understand domestic violence, what it is to be a victim, how to protect victims of domestic violence. This woman lived in La La Land, this judge and others who followed, because she wasn't the only one. So the generally the family, this is what I found surprising, shocking. The family court that should be very much aware of domestic violence issues seem to be totally unaware, living in a bubble. It's amazing that these women who are, or men in the case of the book, there were women. These judges, men or women, I don't care. These judges in the family court must be made aware of the real world. So it's not enough for us to be talking real words and to be, liberating our words. On the other side, people who have responsibilities have to be receptive to these words and have to understand them, hear them and understand what context they are living in and what context they're adjudicating decisions, So it's communication is a two-way street. It's not enough for us to be talking.
So I
The
mean,
other side.
at the national level
Mm.
and the international level, we have a body of law, we have conventions and directives. You're very much aware of them. Um, what is the challenge? I mean, how can we end this systematic, inherent patriarchal relationship
Well,
with
it
this
has.
continuum of power, of violence, which is both public and private? These are not separate issues. What is the way forward?
Well, the way forward is, I tend to look at things from a political point of view, which means I look at always at the economics of a political system. And I don't think that domestic violence is based on some kind of inherent sadism that comes along with testosterone. I think that we need to look at the economic factors that benefit one class of people over another class of people. So if we see a particular violence that is very prevalent in one group of people, we have to see what other factors come into play. So I believe that the economic factors are very much related to this violence. So when we look at, for example, how even in more affluent parts of the world, more democratic parts of the world, and even in a place like France, and even today, women still make less and have, less advantageous work conditions than men. And this is, quite clear when you look at the statistics. I'm not going to get embroiled in statistics at the moment, but it's still the case that women get a lesser salary for doing the same job as a man. Uh, and apart from that, they spend more, especially with monoparental families. There's a good reason why poverty hits women more than men. When there's a divorce or a separation, women usually have the general care of the child or the children. They usually don't have any huge aid to do with childcare, and therefore they tend to, lose more money in taking care of their children. A lot of uh, fathers are not good payers, and they haven't in France. They haven't implemented yet what a system that has been in force in Australia, for example, since the 80s, I believe, or later 80s, early 90s, where the tax department collects the pension alimentaire, the child maintenance. It's not left up to the father to remember to send a check every month. It's taken directly from the fathers who pay maintenance, and therefore it eases the burden a little bit in terms of some of the financial contribution that must go to, children cost a lot of money, so to raise. So of course they have to. It's part of the law as well, but both parents must contribute to the maintenance of the child. Uh, so um, so we
My
need to look.
question is, I mean, when you look at many countries, yes, the inequality between men and women at all levels, including the economic levels, is obvious. I think the pandemic, COVID, has also shown that the poorest of the world, which are the women, are poorer. Who are the women? Are the poorest, poorer again
Mm,
during this period. But the question is, as you said yourself at the beginning of our talk, this is an issue which doesn't know class
mm,
and continent, and so even if you're a woman with an income and you can support yourself and your child or your household, etc., this still comes up. You
mm.
spoke about the power of words, the power of culture.
Yes,
I would like you to expand on this before
yes.
we end
Well,
our discussion.
yes. Well, I mean, I think with all issues that touch humanity, we can't resolve them only by passing laws. We have to make radical changes in the way we view things. So yes, culturally we have to make changes, and in order to make changes culturally, we have to look at how the image of women in education, in the media, because well, it's one thing to have wonderful laws that supposedly respect and protect women, but if the messages are conflicting, if we look at advertisements where women are degraded, or films or radio, music, social media, video games. What I see, for example, is that at a very early age, children that are, entering adolescence, if one looks at the kind of video games or TikToks or whatever they're exposed to through social media, it's quite frightening, actually. The way that their minds are being um, manipulated to see their roles in society, as even as children, of different, of the two genders, right? It's quite shocking to me, and I think that all one has to do is look at some of these video games and the portrayal of girls and women, not just women. Portrayal of girls and women is highly sexualized, but it's not a natural, healthy sexuality. It's a very perverted. Of course, when I say perverted, that's a very subjective word, and I would have to explain it, but. Uh, I'll give you an example of an image that I found disturbing. A video game for people of 13 years of age and over, where you had a half naked cartoon character. It wasn't a real woman, but it was, an image of a woman. She's half naked, we're holding a gun or a bazooka kind of thing, and she's running through some kind of, so it was a blend of a war game with this woman that's half naked and who's shooting everybody, which I thought was a very bizarre, not bizarre. I don't think that that's healthy for 13-year-old girls or boys to be watching and taking in as a role model. Um, so yeah, I mean, if it was an adult who's got other experiences and can discern, which what's real, what's not real, okay, I guess. Eh, but I think we need to be very careful the kind of food for thought that we are feeding into young minds, and we have to look at why this world is getting, in many ways, more and more dangerous in everyday life. Once upon a time, violence was relegated to a war zone or a certain area, the wrong side of the tracks. But it's become normalized. What I'm saying is that and it's become very associated, sexualized and normalized. So we see violence that has been increasing in the last, at least in the media, in the last 30, 40 years, very much associated to violence with that is sexualized as well. So I think we need to look at why, why these. Uh, why is it associated in that way, and why is despite all the conventions, treaties, protocols, human rights, etc., why is it that we haven't been able to change the culture of this violence, and it's getting worse? Why is it getting worse? We need to deal with this at some stage before it explodes in all of explodes the whole society. So that's the way I see it.
Thank you, Niki. Please continue your fight against inequality and all forms of violence. I remember that you've also been extremely active on female genital mutilation and also freedom of speech, and you've been an advocate of these
Yes.
different areas. Please continue, because we need hope, and we're very
Mm.
happy to see how the younger generations in different parts of the world have looked positively to what our the elder generations have been working on for years and trying to move on with new ways. I did mention the plasterers, which was one initiative among others, which is very touching. But from the heart of the Middle East, to the heart of
Well,
Europe, we have generations of young women and men who are trying to change this relationship of power and put an end to inequality.
Well, you're right. So it's very important. These actions have been very important because when you put the name of a victim up on a wall, it becomes more real than some expert talking about a statistic. When you pass a wall and you say Agnès Dupont was murdered here on the 1st of January, 1921, it makes it close to you. It comes. It's this wall is a meter away from you, or half a meter. It's real. So I think we need to be getting back to realities. You know what I mean? So yes, becoming more in touch with reality brings us closer to solutions. This means we will take action. We're not going to wait for some expert or some parliamentarian to take action. We as individuals will get together, organize, and take action. And that's why I wrote this book, and this is why I do what I do, because it's not just a talk, it's to get together so that we all have this conversation and that we all decide on what action we must take to head towards a better world, a humane world. There's no point in this, shouldn't be a utopia, some dream that somebody had that will never become real. It's possible for it to become real, but it will only become real if we organize that. So it's important that we have collective conversations and collective action.
Thank you, Nikki. This was a very good talk. Hope to see you soon again, and good luck
Thank
with
you.
the English edition of Just a Slap. Thank you,
Thank
Nikki
you very much.
Konstantinidou.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.